Capcom, zombies. Zombies, Capcom. When you think of those two words, the first game you think of is, of course,
Resident Evil.
But today I'm looking at the other Capcom Zombies franchise, Dead Rising, a series that is almost 20 years old and has had a bit of a turbulent lifespan, especially in the last 10 years. But thanks to the release of Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster late last year, I thought it was the perfect time to take a look back at the series and see what they got right and especially what they got wrong. So join me as we take a trip back to Willamette in the original Dead Rising. So yeah, today I am looking at the original Dead Rising. This is one of my favourite games from the Xbox 360 era, and yeah, it's been a long time coming. I know it's been a bit delayed. It was supposed to be out way last year when the Deluxe Remaster came out, but obviously things have been delayed, but it's finally here. It's finally time to talk about Dead Rising. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. All the way back in 1996, Capcom released Resident Evil, a game which revolutionised the survival horror genre and also zombies in video games. But after a few years, RE moved away from the classic zombies and to whatever this was. Whilst Dead Rising actually started life as a sequel to a less popular Capcom game, Shadows of Rome, it soon started to morph into the series we know and love today. We'd see bits of the game throughout 2005, and let's just say Frank looked a bit different back then.
Look at this dude. Wait till you see the... No.
But in August of 2006, Dead Rising would officially release exclusively on the Xbox 360. Dead Rising has a very run-of-the-mill basic zombie storyline. There's been a zombie outbreak and you have to spend most of the game figuring out how it started, playing as Frank West, a journalist, asking the serious questions about off on top of the Willamette Mall where he meets a mysterious guy named Carlito. Thankfully he doesn't spit an apple at you, hopefully at least one person got that reference. After making his way down to the entrance of the mall, Frank sees a bunch of people blocking the doors to stop the horde of zombies from coming in. That is until this knobhead gets involved. After this, the zombies have now overrun the mall and Frank just has 3 days to figure out what's going on, meeting a few colourful characters along the way. It's not the story of Dead Rising that makes it interesting though, it's how it's told. The game takes place over 3 days, a similar situation to Majora's Mask. In those 3 days you can do whatever you want to an extent. The reason I bring this up is because how you spend those 3 days massively changes the outcome of the game's endings, which in total there are about 7 different ones. Things like time, saving a certain amount of survivors, or missing certain missions can all be a factor to what ending you get. Even certain boss fight scenarios can completely change depending on the time you get there. Like the Kurt fight for example, if you get there 5 minutes late, you may as well just reload the save because you're going to have a bad time. It's obvious that the game is made to be played more than once, as you keep your level each time you start a new playthrough, making boss fights easier and just simply traversing them all a lot easier too. The story doesn't take itself too seriously either. It has that Japanese take on American culture quirkiness to it, but there's still some dark moments in the game, which mostly come from the psychopaths and the survivors. Just some of Leah's dialogue seem way too dark for a game where you walk around in a dress twatting zombies with a toy sword. I'll be talking about the psychopaths in their own segment, but they definitely add a lot to the game's story. Overall, the main story of Dead Rising is a pretty standard one, but the survivors you meet, and more importantly the psychopaths, add a lot of depth to the world and definitely give you a reason to play through this game more than once. Now time to talk about the gameplay, and just remember this game is almost 20 years old, so it hasn't aged the best, but it's not terrible either. The movement and melee attacks are smooth enough, but there's just some mid-2000s quirks that are a pain to manoeuvre. Firstly, the fact that when you aim your gun, you get stuck in position, similar to Resident Evil 4. It doesn't help when you constantly have to reposition due to the zombies constantly attacking you. It's a similar story for the camera mechanic, which I'll be honest, I only ever used when it was needed for a mission. Other than that, I rarely used it, but the camera can be used as a way to get more XP to level up quicker by catching certain moments during your playthrough. There's also this roll move you unlock, which helps you evade zombies, but then it takes Frank about 10 minutes to recover from doing one. So you just end up being surrounded by zombies again. Also, being stuck in a loop of enemy attacks and having no way to get out of it makes some of the boss fights feel tedious. And then the biggest problem with Dead Rising's gameplay, the AI. You want to know what the smartest NPC in the game is? The zombies. The brain dead horde are a lot smarter than any of the survivors you meet in the mall, which means saving them becomes a massive chore. Walking in a straight line becomes a massive challenge for them, and if you have more than 2 at a time following you, forget about it. It's like trying to stop a 3-week-old puppy from shitting on the floor. They struggle to climb walls, and if you give them a weapon, they decide to pick fights with every group of zombies they see for no apparent reason.
Oi! No fighting. No fucking fighting. No fighting. No fucking fighting! Good. Get fucking...
The survivors are that bad that they made me fail the whole game whilst trying to save them because they constantly get caught out. So yeah, if you're thinking about trying to save everyone, just know it's going to send you a bit mental. But there's a silver lining to all this, because it means the enemy AI isn't too smart either. Most sub-bosses have exploits, and make some of the hardest bosses in the game easy to beat, especially the... That's all I can play of that song, because it's going to get copyrighted otherwise. The prisoners are super overpowered, but get them stuck on a tree and it becomes the easiest boss fight in the game. Another little tedious thing in this game is this fella, fucking Otis. He's the character who keeps you updated about the survivors around the mall and little information when you enter a new location for a walkie-talkie. But the only problem is when you answer it, you can't do anything else. You can't attack, you can't jump, you can drop any heavy weapons you might have. And God forbid you accidentally get attacked by a zombie, he'll just kick off at you. Oh, sorry for my rudeness, Otis. I was just trying to make sure this zombie didn't rip my knob off. Honestly, when you play this game, you'll understand why his calls are so annoying. But yeah, even though in some places the game hasn't aged all too well, I can't deny that it's still fun to go back and play. And if you want a less tedious version of the game, the Deluxe Remaster has changed most of the things I've spoken about. One of the most important parts of any Dead Rising game is the weapons. You see, they could have just gone with the plain old baseball bat, handgun and generic weapons you find in any zombies game, but the devs decided to have a bit of fun with the setting of Dead Rising, as you can use literally anything you see as a weapon. A hanger from a clothes store, that's a weapon. CDs from the entertainment store, that's a weapon. A baguette from a bakery, well, that's a food item, but still, if it's not screwed to the ground, chances are you can use it in some shape or form, whether as a weapon, food, or dressing Frank up in some silly costume, which I didn't really bother with because I've lost my imagination and haven't really got time to dress Frank up in some silly costume. But it's crazy just how many things can be used in the game, and all having different uses. For example, picking up a mask out of a kid's toy store, Frank won't just whack the zombie with it, he'll place it on their head, and then things like CDs are used as throwables, and it kind of reminds me of that scene from Shaun of the Dead. What have we got then? Taylor Swift, that can piss off. Sabrina Carpenter, that can fuck off. PDD, yep, get rid of all them. There's even weapons that are completely useless and impractical, like toy swords and water pistols, and even footballs, but they're all still tons of fun to play around with. And like I said, there's tons of stores with their own unique weapons, like sports shops with baseball bats and golf clubs, antique weapon shops with battle axes and katanas, and even a gun shop, which is a bit unrealistic. I mean, what shopping mall would have a gun shop? Never mind, that makes a bit more sense. The food items also have a bit of depth to them, as most food items can be mixed in a blender to give Frank a stat boost for a limited time. And cooked to give you a bit more health. This is important especially if you only have a limited amount of space in your inventory, and also if you pick up raw meat and hold on to it for a while without cooking it, it goes off, which is quite a cool little detail. Speaking of limited space, there's also these magazines you can find throughout the mall which give you a permanent stat boost as long as you carry them around with you, which I'd only recommend during the later levels where there's a bit more inventory space to work with. But some of them are definitely worth picking up. They range from making weapons 3 times more durable, which I forgot to mention, weapons break quite quickly and don't last forever, so this upgrade is a godsend. And also one which boosts the health you get from food items by 100%. It's a shame you have to carry them around, taking up spaces on your inventory, but then again, having them all applied at once would make you way too overpowered. There's a few vehicles in the game as well, but they don't have that much of an impact on the overall game. There's small items you can find around the mall, like skateboards, trolleys, lawnmowers, which can help you deal with big hordes quite quickly, whether that's mowing them down or just doing some sick tricks to get past them. Then you have the cars and motorbikes, which aren't really that important in the game. They have their uses, but you won't be using them an awful lot, but still add a bit more to the game, being able to drive around the park in the middle of the mall in a car or using the bike you get after defeating one of the sub-bosses to get around the mall quicker. But yeah, at this point in the series, vehicles don't really make that much of an impact. One more thing to mention is the levelling up system I mentioned earlier. Your level carries on through your next playthrough, which makes each new game a lot easier. This is because everything Frank does is upgraded, from his health, inventory space to his speed and special moves you unlock throughout. Sadly, you don't get to choose what to upgrade with each new level, but every time you level up, your health does get set back to 100%, which can save you out of some sticky situations. The way you level up is just by doing things in the game, like killing a certain amount of zombies, saving survivors, taking out psychopaths, or using the camera mechanic I spoke about earlier to capture important moments throughout your time in the mall. The levelling up system ties it all up quite nicely, as levelling up quickly is definitely in your best interest. I think one of the best things in Dead Rising is of course playing around with all the weapons you have at your disposal, and while some are there just to have a bit of fun with, other items will become a big part in your strategy throughout the game, making sure you have the right food items, the best weapons and a few magazines to give you the best chance at survival. It's this mix of fun and strategy which makes Dead Rising such a blast to play. Oh, and also just doing this as well.
Neves brings it down on the volley. Oh, you must be kidding me!
One of the main things you'll be doing in Dead Rising is saving survivors and taking out psychopaths. I've already spoken about the survivors a little bit, but I just wanted to add a little bit more, as rescuing them takes up a main chunk of the game, so that means most of the time you're putting up with this shit. Each of them have a backstory, and even though their dialogue goes on for way too long, for a game that makes sure you use every second wisely, they don't half chat shit. But I like the fact that the survivors are actual characters and not just some generic nameless NPCs, with some of them even sending you on quests to get food and other things along those lines. They're kind of like Sims. If Sims spend most of their time headbutting a fucking toaster, the other survivors you come across in the mall are known as psychopaths. These are like sub-bosses you'll come across during your time in the mall, and something I used to absolutely hate as a kid. Entering a new part of the map just to be met with a cutscene of one of these iconic bosses was terrifying. When it comes to psychopaths, I think without a doubt the original game does it best, with some of the most unique bosses in the series, with ones like the prisoners and their now iconic music, Adam the Clown with his dual wielding chainsaws, and Sean, the leader of a cult, which take over the mall on the second day and the third. Each boss fight is such a unique experience and makes use of the surroundings, especially the fights against Stephen and Cliff. As I said before, beating them nowadays is pretty easy, once you know their exploits, and also once you have access to Adam's OP mini chainsaws, they all become quite easy, which, speaking of the chainsaws, most of the psychopaths drop special weapons which spawn back in every time you re-enter the location, except for the prisoners. They just respawn in every time you enter the park for some strange reason. One of the things to remember about the psychopaths is that they are just survivors like the ones you've been saving, but have just snapped for one reason or another, which gives them some pretty tragic backstories. Not Kent though, he's just a knobhead. The two that stick out to me are Cliff, a Vietnam vet wielding a machete, who after losing his granddaughter during the initial outbreak has now taken over a hardware store, capturing survivors as prisoners of war while slaughtering the zombies. Obviously the sight of losing his granddaughter sent him into some sort of PTSD fueled trance, and he only breaks out of it once you take him out. It's a very similar story to Adam the Clown, who was performing for a group of kids at the mall when the outbreak happened, and had to watch as they were overrun with zombies, which again made him snap, and now he's stuck in some sort of trance which ultimately sees him meet a tragic end. But hey, you get these sweet mini chainsaws once you beat him. There's 14 boss fights in total, with almost each one being unique in setup and of course character, with one of them being able to be saved after you fight them. Every game in the series has their own version of survivors and psychopaths, but I don't think any other game in the series does it quite like the original. One of the main reasons I like coming back to the original Dead Rising, even over the deluxe remaster, is its world and map. The game is set entirely in the Willamette Mall, which by today's standards is quite small, but the level of detail in each area definitely makes up for such a small map. The mall is separated into 5 different plazas, a food court and a park right in the middle of it all, and even an underground section which you unlock later in the game to take shortcuts to each individual part of the map. Each part feels entirely unique with its own layout and assortment of shops. Paradise Plaza is where you re-enter the mall every time you come down from the security room. Its main attraction is the cinema, which is insanely accurate to something you'd see in the early 2000s. Everything down to the carpet is accurate. Then there's the Wonderland Plaza. It seems like it's a section for kids, with a massive roller coaster spanning most of the area. Even though it's quite impressive, it has nothing on the play centre for kids in my local shopping centre. That's not even a joke, that's what it looks like. Entrance Plaza is probably the most forgetful, as it's just full of shops with not much going on there until later in the game. Then North Plaza, an unfinished part of the mall, which becomes a massive part of the game later on, with tons of psychos and survivors to save. It's just an absolute ball ache to get through. Then there's Alfresca Plaza, which I fucking despise. If you see a survivor in this area, just fucking leave them there. It's the best option for everyone involved. There's also so much to see in the world of Dead Rising. It feels like every space was thought about and every shop interior had some thought behind it. I still can't get over how a game from 2006 had this many spaces to explore. Every shop can be entered, and it's a shame there's no sandbox mode just to explore the map without any time limit. The game even does something better than the remaster, which released only last year, and there's just something about the atmosphere and vibe of it all that the devs just got right. Everything from the look of the shop fronts to the generic mall music, which there's some absolute bangers. I'm not going to play them just in case it's copyright, but just look up Dead Rising mall music and you'll see what I mean. For someone who grew up in the early 2000s when shopping centres had some really unique stores like this, it's so fun to go back to Dead Rising and explore the Willamette Mall for a bit of nostalgia. I think it's the same reason I love the mall stage from Tekken 4, it has a very similar vibe to this. Overall, Dead Rising's map isn't the biggest map you'll play in, it's not even the biggest map in the series, but it's definitely quality over quantity. Exploring it just shows how much work went into the game overall and how perfect the devs captured the vibe of an early 2000s shopping mall. After playing the Deluxe Remaster late last year, I thought going back to the original would be a massive step back, but I was wrong. The original Dead Rising still holds up almost 20 years later. The game is proof that with the right team, a concept about killing zombies in a mall can become such an immersive and fun experience. Even though the AI struggles sometimes, that doesn't stop the fact that this game is such a blast to go back and play. The gameplay still holds up, the visuals are just as good as they've always been, and there's just something so special about exploring the Willamette Mall in its original form that the Deluxe Remaster just couldn't replicate. So yeah, that is it for Dead Rising, and of course I've got to put it in the brand new, fresh tier list for the Dead Rising series. And I was umming and ahhing about this. I wasn't too sure where to put it, but I am going to put it in S tier. I was going to put it in A, just because of the AI. The AI lets it down a lot. But if I had to give it like a S plus or S minus, it'd be an S minus, just based on the AI. But everything else about the game is perfect. Even the Deluxe Remaster didn't replicate the vibe and the feel of the original. The Psychopaths are great additions. The Survivors have a lot of what's the word? They're fleshed out. They're actual like real characters, not just NPCs that you randomly save like future games in the series. The mall is probably the best open world in the Dead Rising series, without a doubt. Everything about it's just great. If you've never played a Dead Rising game before, definitely start with the original Dead Rising. The Deluxe Remaster does look a lot better, but the original just has things that the remaster could not replicate. So yeah, it's no doubt it had to go on S tier because it is the first game in the series and it's the best game in the series. I think the second one does do a few things better, but it also does a few things worse. So I'll be talking about that very, very soon. But yeah, Dead Rising 1 has to go in S tier, I think, in my opinion. So that is it. That's the first video in the Dead Rising series. It's been a long time coming. This video was supposed to be out ages ago, but I have been a bit delayed. I'll be having a video out soon explaining where I've been and why it's been so long. But yeah, here we go. 2025 starting off well. January, I've got a video out. I didn't think I was gonna, but it's come along nicely. I actually really did enjoy making this video, and I can't wait to make the next one, which is Dead Rising 2. Obviously it'll be out sometime, hopefully in February. I'm gonna have a few more videos planned as well out on the channel that are separate to Dead Rising, so keep an eye out for those. Best way to keep up to date with the channel is to just subscribe. I rarely post on Twitter or Facebook about the channel. I post a lot in my community tab and when the next video is coming out or what I'm working on. So yeah, if you have enjoyed the video, please subscribe. It's the best way to keep up to date. Turn notifications on. And if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like, leave a comment down below. What do you think of Dead Rising? Where would you put it in ranking in terms of your favourite Dead Rising games, if that sentence made sense? But yeah, hope you've enjoyed today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm not going to leave this outro too long, but yeah, thanks again for the patience as well, waiting for these videos. And yeah, that's pretty much it. See you in the next one. See you for Dead Rising 2, and as always, I'll see you when I see you.